Opposition Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Chief Minister. Chief Minister, your Attorney-General appointed a new Director of Legal Aid despite the appointee being found not suitable for the job by an independent panel. Today you have quietly gone ahead and appointed Mr Stuart Knowles as the ongoing Territory Coordinator without advertising the role, without any independent hiring process and without information to the salary. It has been revealed today, Chief Minister, that you have also known about the animal abuse charges against Mr Knowles since 2023, despite denying knowledge of it in the Parliament yesterday. At the time when Territorians are deeply concerned, Chief Minister, with integrity of hiring practices of government, do you really think that this passes the pub test? And how can Territorians have faith in your word or in your judgment?
Chief Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I love the opportunity to get up and talk about the Territory Coordinator. And I met with Stuart Knowles this morning to catch up on the really important reformation that they are doing to the Territory. And I note at the budget lunch yesterday, that the CLP brought back, Madam Speaker, that the economists were absolutely excited about the role of the Territory Coordinator. But I think this is very important, very, very important to clear up. So, yes, Madam Speaker, the Opposition Leader email address and the Spillett email accounts, along with the then Chief Minister Natasha Fyles, received an email from someone on the 30th of May. And as the Opposition Leader knows, as all of us know, our electorate accounts and our ministerial accounts receive thousands of emails every single year. I can absolutely confirm that I have no recollection of that there was no action taken because the email was sent to your Chief Minister, Natasha Fyles. And in fact, your Chief Minister, Natasha Fyles, actually replied to the email.
Order.
She replied to the email.
Silence.
And when she replied to the email on the 29th of May to this former government employee, she said, "Your correspondence indicates these matters have been considered and closed by both integrity bodies." So what integrity bodies are we talking about? Well, it was the ICAC and the Public Interest Disclosure Commissioner looked at it, and then the Chief Minister's office went back to the individual and said, and I quote, "All of the matters you have raised have been considered by the appropriate statutory authorities outlined above, and a ministerial inquiry will not be conducted." So, in effect, Natasha Fyles didn't even think it met the threshold of looking into, Madam Speaker. And I wonder whether the Opposition Leader actually knew about this, given she was the Attorney-General, Madam Speaker. So this had all been looked at. This all happened under Labor's watch.
Please take your seat, Chief Minister. Member for Karama, I'm guessing your point of order. We will have silence. Opposition Leader, you're continuing to talk. I'll put you on a warning.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Opposition Leader just said, I'm reaching far. Well, this reaches back 10 years, Madam Speaker, and it lands squarely in the seat of Natasha Fyles, the previous Chief Minister, Madam Speaker. So there is much rewriting of history going on, and those opposite have shown they are willing to drag public servants into the mud. They're not willing to let anyone make a mistake because they are so perfect. Mr Knowles has apologised. He has rectified the issue. There wasn't even a fine issued, Madam Speaker, because the inspectors went back around there. This is just disgusting gutter politics from an opposition that's out of ideas, doing nothing for the Territory. And you know what it tells me, Madam Speaker? It tells me that we're doing a good job. Because if this is the rubbish you come into Parliament with, God help us, Madam Speaker, you are an absolute disgrace.
Your time has expired,
honestly,
Chief
you're
Minister.
digging the bottom of the barrel there.
Your time has expired. Let's take a deep breath at this point, everyone. Member for Drysdale.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my question is to the Chief Minister. Chief Minister, Budget 2025 delivers action, certainty and security for Territorians and backs in our frontline staff who work hard every day for Territorians. I'm pleased this includes our fireys who play a crucial role in our emergency services and keeping Territorians safe. Whether it's floods, cyclones or bushfires, our Territory firefighters battle through the worst on conditions and put their lives on the line, all in the name of keeping Territorians safe. Chief Minister, Can you please explain to the House how Budget 2025 supports the incredible work our firefighters do and delivers an important milestone for our fire and emergency services?
Chief Minister.
Thank you, Member for Drysdale. And as Assistant Minister for Police, I know you take a very keen eye on fire and emergency services as well, because they're out there every day protecting Territorians, just like our police are, and they do a really fantastic job. But you know what? Labor didn't see that. And so whilst Labor wanted to govern by press release and make sure they put out a press release saying they'd split the tri-service and they'd taken fire and emergency out of police, do you know what they didn't do, Member for Drysdale? They didn't fund them for it. They didn't fund them for it. And in fact, they entered into an enterprise bargaining agreement with the fireys that they didn't fund either. And so our fire and emergency services, who have had an entire restructure, and on coming to government, we put Bushfires NT in with them, and that's been a really fantastic piece of work. They didn't have full funding to be able to really go and be their own agency. And so again, instead of all of this optics management that Labor's so focused on, we're doing the actual work of government, which is giving our public service the funding they need to be able to do their job. And so we have a $7 million a year ongoing additional funding for our fire and emergency services, because they are a standalone agency and they deserve to be funded properly as one, Madam Speaker. That takes their total funding up to $86.8 million for this next year. And as part of that, it means we can do some really exciting things. Something that Labor didn't do. And in fact, something that Labor took away from the people of the Barkly was their bushfires office. And so this funding will put back in 2 fire management officers and 2 new grass fire units into the Barkly. And that gives us such incredible capability to be able to protect people in that region, work with communities, work with landholders, do that important preparation work so that we don't see a repeat of the Barkly bushfires that we saw. This is really exciting, and it's something that Labor took away. But again, with proper funding, we can make sure that people across the Territory, no matter where they live, are protected. And that's exactly what we told Territorians we would do. And so as we've got this new and modern standalone agency, we continue to back them in. We need them to be able to pay the fireys because they do an excellent job. They deserve to be paid, so we're giving them the money to pay them. We need to have firefighting capability across the Northern Territory. And to think that bushfires were having to plug that hole in the Barkly is terrible. And so those days are over. You know, it's putting lives, putting property, our cattle industry, remote communities as well. The list is endless. So we're really proud to be delivering on our commitments to protect Territorians, to keep the Territory safe, and that includes making sure that our fire and emergency services have the funding they need to be able to do an incredibly important role no matter where you live, and we're proud to have delivered this as our budget.
Member for Guadja.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I know the member for Drysdale is keen to hear this. Attorney General, yesterday you claimed that the new Director of Legal Aid's time working at the former CLP Minister Peter Maley's law firms was one of the reasons why she was qualified for the critical and highly paid director role at Legal Aid. Given your long-standing personal ties to the Maley family, given Peter Maley's $15,000 donation to the CLP, given your Cabinet colleagues' family and business links to Peter Maley's law firm, and given that Peter Maley has been acting as the new director's referee, do you still deny that you have a serious conflict of interest with this appointment?
Attorney General, quiet. Silence, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the member for the question. Obviously a really keen interest in what's happening in legal aid, especially because you pretty much destroyed it over the last 8 years. And so now the CLP has been elected to change the legal system, change the justice system, because we need to change what's happening out in our street with community safety. So Catherine Vormard, she is going to be the new Director of Legal Aid, and I'm very proud of that, and I'm backing her in. Under the Legal Aid Act, as the Minister, I can appoint the Legal Aid Director, and I have done that based on a merit process. Because I need change management in the justice system. I need change management in legal aid. An organisation that has been calling for reform, calling for more funding, more certainty around funding, to the Labor government for 8 long years. So I am going to absolutely back them in, and I know they're going to do a good job. They're going to have some new board members, which I welcome because I welcome the change. And let's just be really clear. If you don't know Peter Maley and you live in the Territory, then I don't know where you've been living, because Peter Maley has a very long-standing business. He works with a lot of people and has done for a long, long time. In fact, I went through an interview process with Ms Vermaad, and Peter Maley was not a referee, so I don't know where those accusations are coming from, but they are wrong. I'm going to keep backing in Legal Aid. They have a big job that they have coming up. They've been working really hard. Their staff in that office have been stretched to the max. They've been down in the courts. They've been working with offenders. They've been trying to get access for justice for victims for a long time, and really struggling under the demands and the pressure. And that's not looking like it's going away anytime soon, because we have introduced a whole range of new laws to ensure our community is safe. So we are going to need that reform
Take your
in
seat,
legal
please,
aid.
Minister. What is your point of order, Opposition Leader?
Standing Order 110, relevance. I know we've got legal studies students. We don't need a history of legal aid. We
Be
know
quick.
that. The question was around your conflict of interest, Attorney General, as the First Law Officer of the Northern Territory.
Attorney General, you've got the call.
I'm answering the question, and I don't understand what the premise of that question is. I'm the minister appointed and elected to do a really important job, and that is to change the Territory. That is to change the justice system to ensure that our community is safe. And if that means putting new leadership into organisations which need change of management, change of leadership, reform to do better so that they can support Territorians, and that's exactly what I'm doing. That is the job that I was elected to do, Madam Speaker. So I'm not going to stand here and apologise for an appointment which I'm absolutely backing in about Ms Vermaad, who's going to do an exceptional job. She has so much credibility, Madam Speaker. She has worked right across the justice system, both in the Territory for a very long time and in South Australia. So when she comes back to Darwin after a stint in South Australia, I welcome her. I look forward to meeting with her and finding out the changes that she's going to make at Legal Aid.
Member for Guadja, supplementary question.
Again, Member for Drysdale's excited. My question is to the Attorney General. Attorney General, in your answer you responded you believed that she had met the merit process, given that the independent panel said she did not meet a merit process and did not have the criteria. What process are you using other than political motivations, Attorney General?
Quiet, please. Silence. All of you. Attorney General.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Including you,
whilst
Leader
the member
of
for
Government
Guadja
Business.
spent his time as Attorney General, obviously not happy with what public servants are doing, I am following the Act. The Act that says...
No, take your seat. She's only just been speaking for 9 seconds, Member for Guadja. Please continue. Take your seat. Attorney General, continue your response.
And I think I might have even suggested yesterday, Madam Speaker, that the member for Guadja should go and look at the Legal Aid Act of 1990. We can send it to you. Maybe he needs to go and revisit that, because he's probably forgotten after being the Attorney General for that time while he was in government. But that Act specifically says that it's the Attorney General who appoints the Legal Aid Director, not an independent panel, not a government agency, the Attorney General. So I stand by my decision to appoint Ms Vermaad. I think she's going to do a great job, and I'm looking forward to meeting with her when she comes back to Darwin, and we can work together to reform legal aid so that we can keep our community safer and have access to justice for victims and, of course, for offenders. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Quiet. Member for Blaine, what is your question?
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I look forward to asking my question in silence. My question is to the Treasurer, the very Honourable Bill Yan. Treasurer, one of the CLP's key initiatives, the now Chief Minister announced in her budget reply speech last year, was what would become the most significant home owner scheme in NT history, the Homegrown Territory Grants Program. Fast forward 9 months and the CLP government has helped 25 families in my electorate of Blaine and almost 600 families across the Territory buy a house through these grants. Over a quarter of these grants have been paid or approved to build a new home. Treasurer, how is the CLP How is the CLP building on the success of our nation-leading homegrown territory grants program in the CLP Finocchiaro government's first budget? Thank you, Mr Treasurer.
Quiet, member for Guadja.
Thank you, Member for
Treasurer,
Blaine.
you
And
have the
I thank you for the question. I'm really glad to hear that the people in your electorate are taking up the opportunity of these home loan grants. And Madam Speaker, builders want to build and Territorians want to get on the property ladder. And that's why after my budget address in Parliament on Tuesday, I announced at the Master Builders and Chamber of Commerce lunch that the CLP Finocchiaro government is extending our landmark $30,000 and $50,000 homegrown territory grants for another 12 months into next year. After CLP implemented our homegrown territory grants last October, we have helped over 150 Territorians to start building a home of their own, stimulating the economy and adding much-needed housing stock to our housing supply. Madam Speaker, that's 150 houses that Labor failed to add to the Territory's housing supply during their 8 years in government. And it took the CLP, Madam Speaker, less than 1 year. After our government announced we would be extending this program, peak industry leaders such as Housing Industry Australia NT's Executive Director Luis Espinosa said this extension will bolster home building activity, supporting local building, trade and supply businesses after several challenging years under Labor. Bolster building activity, supporting local building, trade and supply businesses ongoing. Madam Speaker, these challenging years are well and truly over, with the latest economic indicators showing that the CLP's Homegrown Territory program has been massively successful in stimulating our economy. The ComSec State of the States report shows that the Territory is leading the nation on construction work, which under our government has increased by 13.2% year on year. In data just released, Madam Speaker, just last week, the ABS for the last quarter, residential building approvals, increased by 48.6%, and the number of Territorians seeking housing finance increased by 16.5% compared to the same time last year when Labor were in government, Madam Speaker. The benefit of these grants to our broader economy is also apparent in analysis undertaken by the Department of Treasury and Finance. Assuming a typical cost to build of $400,000, the $6.5 million grants the CLP has paid out have had a direct economic contribution of $56 million to our economy. And Madam Speaker, that is not monopoly money. These are real dollars that are flowing to territory builders, suppliers and tradies. With a whopping 761% return on the grant money the CLP invested to help Territorians achieve their home ownership dreams last October, we know the homegrown territory grants are backing our builders and making a difference and making the Territory great again. And I'm proud to be able to stand up with the CLP Finocchiaro Liberal government, CLP government, to announce the extension of these programs.
Member for Daly.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Tourism. Minister, you continue to dodge questions about allegations of misuse of taxpayer funds at the waterfront. Instead of calling for an independent investigation, you relied on internal reports from the Department of Chief Minister and Cabinet and the Waterfront Corporation itself, then decided that you assumed everything was fine. Given Territorians' ongoing concerns about this matter, will you now table the full report that led to your assumptions so Territorians can judge for themselves?
Minister for Tourism and Hospitality.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The matters that have been raised all happened under Labor, and I have made my own inquiries as to the substance of those claims.
Quiet.
And the waterfront, just like every other agency, is subject to scrutiny, such as by the Auditor-General.
Member for Karama. What's your
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Attorney-General. Attorney-General, businesses in my electorate of Karama, including the Karama Bottle-O, recently suffered from criminal behaviour from violent youth offenders with edged weapons. Can you please update the House on how the Finocchiaro CLP government is taking urgent and decisive action to strengthen community safety through Australia's toughest bail laws? What specific changes have been made to ensure that violent offenders, including youth, are kept off our streets and out of our community? And how does this reform reflect the expectations of Territorians, particularly following the tragic incident in Nycliffe, as well as the broader commitment of the CLP government to protect the public, restore law and order and deliver real consequences for those who break the law?
Attorney General.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the member for Karama for that really important question. I know you've spoken to me many times about your community and the crime that they had been experiencing over such a long time, and they are now expecting the CLP government, the new government, to go and reduce that crime, especially in your suburbs of Karama and Malak there. And Madam Speaker, we know that over a number of years, Labor watered down all of the laws and, of course, which created this crime crisis across the territory. They literally put the rights of offenders above the rights of victims and society, which has caused an all-out crime crisis. And they failed to act when Territorians called for action, and of course Territorians paid the price, and some of them the ultimate price, as we saw a number of weeks ago. And that's why, Madam Speaker, we were elected. And that's why, straight away, we introduced a suite of new laws back in October, including Declan's Law, which changed the presumption against bail for offenders. And then only a couple of weeks ago, after a really tragic incident, we needed to recall Parliament urgently. The Chief Minister immediately recalled Parliament for those couple of days later and sent all of us to work to get on with a new law, a new tough bail law, which ended up being the toughest in the country, Madam Speaker. And those strong bail laws that we introduced only a week ago now put community safety at the absolute centre and the highest of priorities when police or our decision makers, such as our judges, are addressing bail and determining whether somebody gets bail or not for one of those serious offences. So not only does a decision maker like a policeman or a judge need to ensure that they apply Declan's Law, and even if that offender gets over that hurdle of a presumption against bail, the decision maker must also now have a high degree of confidence that that offender won't pose a risk to community safety. And then even if that judge decides that they won't cause a risk to community safety, then they also need to be sure that that offender is not going to reoffend if they give that person bail, which is why it makes us the toughest in the country. And this applies, of course, to more violent crimes, things like sexual offences and assaults and with intent to steal. And of course, part of that bail change was for youth as well. And we removed detention as a last resort from the legislation because we need to ensure that the community is safe above these offenders going out and just continuing to get second, third, fourth, 10th chances out in our community and continuing to hurt more people. And of course, we have the biggest law and order budget that we have seen. So yeah, Member for Karama, that's how we're backing you in.
Time has expired, Minister. Member for Gwadja, what is your question?
Madam Speaker, my question is to the Minister for the Prevention of Domestic and Family Violence. Minister, yesterday in Parliament, the member for Drysdale said he rejected the idea that there is no place for violence in our community. With violent crime on the rise across the Northern Territory under your government, do you agree with the member for Drysdale that the answer to violence is more violence?
Minister for Prevention of Domestic Violence.
It's on the parliamentary record. It's on Hansard.
Thanks, Madam Speaker, and it's always good to take things out of context. I think the really important thing in this space, Member for Gwadja, is that the work that we are doing to address the root causes of domestic family and sexual violence are critical to breaking the cycle that ends up with our young people thinking that it's okay to go on a rampage through Nycliffe, standing on roundabouts in groups, belting cars with poles, throwing rocks, causing harm. What we're doing is we're saying that's not okay, Madam Speaker. We are working really hard to get to those kids at a point in time where there is hope that they will see that that is not a path they should be taking, where they will see that there are people who care about what happens to them, who will work with them, Madam Speaker, who will give them an opportunity to choose a different path, to find a different group of peers, to go to school, to work together, to see a really good result for them where they have the opportunity to lead really strong lives in our community, caring for each other as opposed to egging each other on to do harm to others in the community who just happen to get in their way. We have a fantastic program that's been rolled out addressing the issue of juvenile causes of domestic violence, where we can get to those kids at a moment in time where we can work with their families, where we can show them there is an alternate pathway. And that is why in this budget that was announced and tabled here on Tuesday, we have invested significantly to make sure that that message is sent very clearly, that there are safe places for those victims, survivors of domestic violence, that there are programs that show our kids what the alternate pathway is. Madam Speaker, the member for Drysdale.
Take your seat, please. Minister, what's your point of order? Member for Gwaja.
Standing Order 110, relevance. Madam Speaker, I ask the Minister for the Prevention of Domestic and Family Violence to directly answer the question. Do you share the same view as the member for Drysdale, that sometimes violence needs to be used to solve violence? That's the question, Madam Speaker,
Okay.
is that the
Take
answer
your
is
seat, member for
sometimes
Gwaja.
violence against
your
violence.
seat. Take your seat, member for Gwaja. You're actually asking the minister for an opinion, and it's up to the minister whether she answers that. Please continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. What I can say in this House is that, without question, one of the greatest advocates for change in this space, one of the people in our team who has the best experience because that person was a youth worker in the justice system and understands what is required, is the member for Drysdale. This is a man who has walked the walk, talked the talk.
Take your seat, Minister. This better be good. No speeches, point of order.
It's going to be good. It's going to be. Madam Speaker, my question is to the Minister for the Prevention of Domestic Violence. Does the government support the member for Drysdale's position? Is that the formal position
Sit down,
of the
member
government?
for Gwaja. No more points of order. That's another opinion, and you can answer it, Minister, the way you choose. It's a question of an opinion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So it's fantastic to be able to draw on the experience of people like the member for Drysdale as we work together as a government to show those in our community who choose violence as the answer to their frustrations, who choose violence to act out in our community, that that is not the way to go, that is not the answer, and together as a government we will give them the opportunity to change their path, to work with us to have a better outcome in their life, to lead to a much, much better solution for our community.
Member for Fong Lim, what is your question?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Mining and Energy. Minister, this week we have heard about the details of the Northern Territory budget for 2025-26 financial year. Now, our government has moved to put energy affordability at the core of our energy strategy to ease cost of living pressures for Territorians. Now, part of that energy affordability strategy has included the uptake of battery systems in residences and small businesses, and our government has previously increased the home and business battery scheme from $5,000 to $12,000, which I personally applaud. Now, Minister, could I please ask you to outline to the Assembly, for everyone's benefit, what our government has done in this budget to facilitate more affordable energy for Territorians?
Minister for Mining and Energy.
And I know that you're passionate about this because everyone is feeling the cost of living pinch. Madam Speaker, before I get started on the answer, I just want to give you a bit of a history about the battery scheme. When the previous government were in power, they had it at $6,000 and they cut it to $5,000. So then they bang on about how good and how renewable energy they support, yet they cut the benefit. They cut it. Well, I'm just going to get started. That's my next paragraph. Just one thing at a time, Chief Minister. One thing at a time, Chief Minister. Because so just going back to what I'm saying, so they cut it from 6,000 to 5,000, and then, Madam Speaker, then what they did is they promised Territorians that they wouldn't cut the tariff, and guess what they did? They did a backflip and cut the tariff. They cut it after promising Territorians they wouldn't. So that's just a little history lesson about where we're at, Madam Speaker. Well, that's what I'm saying. So they cut it. They actually, like I said yesterday, they thought about it. They acted positively to trick Territorians. They misled them and then they cut it. And that is a history, Madam Speaker. So I invite the other side to go and re-look at that, because that's exactly what happened. Madam Speaker, so let me get back to what the Country Liberal Party have done, Madam Speaker. We know that we put it up to $12,000. $12,000. And, Madam Speaker, we also doubled the pool, because the Labor government had $3 million and we put it to $6 million. So we did a double-double. A double-double. We gave them more money and increased the pool. And, Madam Speaker, do you know what that meant when we increased the pool? That meant that we were able to get more Territorians to have batteries and solar panels into their homes. Because that's what it's about, cost of living, Madam Speaker. If you go through and get your solar panels and your batteries and you set it up correctly, you can lower your power bill. You can go back and have your solar panels during the day charging your batteries when you're not home, when you're at work or whatever you're doing. And then at night time, Madam Speaker, you can use that battery power to be able to live and do the cooking and operate at home and have almost a nil balance and not pay a power bill. So that is real relief for Territorians, Madam Speaker. Unlike the previous Labor government who tricked Territorians, they cut the renewable rebate, where the CLP have done it. But, Madam Speaker, in this budget, our government has approved an additional $3.135 million for the home and battery scheme, taking the pool up to $6 million. Yeah. So instead of cutting like Labor have done, Madam Speaker, we've increased them, because we know that cost of living is a very high priority. Other than crime and community safety, cost of living is there, and many Territorians are concerning about it. So, Madam Speaker, between December and late April, 460 applications were received for this program. So it's actually a program that's working and going out there and giving Territorians relief from day to day, because that's what the CLP do, Madam Speaker. We support Territorians.
Member for Arafura.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Public Service. Minister, one of your government's first acts was to create a top-heavy public sector with six new departments, expanding the public service to 18.
Silence, please.
To 18 departments. The budget handed down by the Treasurer on Tuesday fails to outline the cost of creating these new agencies. Minister, will you now detail the cost to the Territory budget and Territory taxpayers of your changes to the machinery of government?
Minister for Public Service.
That's actually a very good question, Madam Speaker, and coming from the opposition who were in government that could not get anything right and left us with an $11 billion debt, I just find that extremely interesting. The reports that we had were just, I mean, the question is just unbelievable. What we have done—
Silence, please. Minister. Continue.
What we have done is created efficiencies across departments. So, for example, with myself, I am the Minister for Education and Training, so right from the very start of a child's life, right through to the end, and public service. So you don't have to go across departments like we did under the previous government, where you had to go to several different ministers when you wanted an answer to a question. We have streamlined things. We may have more departments, but we have certainly not spent more money. I can assure you of that, Madam Speaker. We are making, the departments are finding efficiencies across because of the debt that we have found, that we have been left with. And so all departments have been asked to find efficiencies in their departments. We are not bolstering the public sector anymore. We have plenty of public servants out there that do great work each and every day. And so if there are efficiencies in their department, then that is their job to find them. But, Madam Speaker, we are making sure that all departments are working extremely efficiently. working productively each and every day to make sure that we have the information as ministers that we need. And as I said, the main thing is that in each department, you don't need to go across with 5 different ministers or 3 different ministers, as was some of the case under the previous government.
Member for Goyder. Silence, please, Opposition Leader.
Madam Speaker, my question is to the Minister for Water Resources. Minister, very recently, the Northern Territory Controller of Water Resources made a water extraction licence decision to grant a water extraction licence to Larrimah Farms for agricultural development at the Larrimah Agricultural Development Hub. Sustainable agriculture development is a key driver for rebuilding the Territory economy through job creation and the economic stimulus into our regions. Minister, can you please update the House on this water licence decision and explain the benefits of activating available water for development in the Territory?
Minister for Water Resources.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for Goyder for the question. This government, Madam Speaker, was elected on a clear mandate to rebuild the Territory economy, something that had all but come to a standstill under the previous Labor government. We are committed to rebuilding the economy through a range of reforms that provide a strong foundation for growth. With robust regulatory frameworks matching world-class environmental protections and long-term certainty for business investment, we want to see investment and development in the Territory. This is made possible, Madam Speaker, by providing access to our resources for the benefits of all Territorians. Water licensing plays a key role as an economic enabler for responsible development. Since entering government, we have declared the Mataranka Water Allocation Plan and revised the Western Davenport Water Allocation Plan. Both water plans are based on the best available science and community advice. The water plans have been declared for 10 years to provide certainty to the community and for investment, creating and supporting regional businesses and jobs. Water plans in the Territory recognise our unique context. Water plans share water, prioritising most of the water for the environment first and protecting our Territory lifestyle, then sharing water between users either for human and livestock consumption or for development. The recent decision by the Independent Controller of Water Resources is a very positive one, Madam Speaker. Agriculture is a massive contributor to the growth of the Territory's regional economies and creates thousands of jobs for Territorians directly and indirectly. The Larrimah Agricultural Development Area offers over 1,400 hectares of land suitable for a range of intensive agriculture. The advantage of an extended season for high-value crops such as melons, and it presents opportunities for a range of broadacre irrigated crops such as cotton, peanuts and fodder, along with pastoral activities. Larrimah Farms will contribute an estimated $30 million in additional gross value of production to the Territory agricultural sector. And I also need to acknowledge Monday's decision, Madam Speaker, from the full bench of the Supreme Court in relation to Fortune Agribusiness's water licence. The full bench, Madam Speaker, dismissed the appeal to overturn the water licence following years of delays. This is good news, and good news for Fortune Agribusiness and for those residing in the Western Davenport region. It's these outcomes that will help rebuild our economy that Labor so blatantly ruined over 8 years. We will continue to trust the professionals who undertake years of research and groundwork so they can provide these recommendations and make safe and sustainable decisions to support economic growth. I look forward to continue with the momentum by putting my trust in the experts, Madam Speaker, and in the science to safely achieve economic resilience while protecting our natural assets.
Member for Johnston.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my question is for the Attorney-General. Attorney-General, the CLP is calling this budget a law and order budget. Where in the budget is the commitment to the coroner's findings and recommendations into the domestic, family and sexual violence-related deaths of Kumanjai Haywood, Ngayu Ragurk, Miss Yunupingu and Kumanjai Rabancha relevant to your portfolio? Specifically recommendation 18, which calls for NT government funding of mediators to support conflict resolution in domestic, family and sexual violence matters. Recommendation 19, which urges recognition, regulation and funding of community-led mediation and peacekeeping groups in remote Northern Territory communities. And recommendation 20, which calls for a commitment to enhancing alternatives to custody for domestic family violence perpetrators. Thank you.
Attorney-General.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the member for Johnson for this important question because, as we know, domestic violence is a horrific state of affairs across the Northern Territory. I think over the last 8 years it had increased by about 80+%, and it's absolutely disgraceful. And we did have a coroner's report, which I believe is to be tabled sometime in the next this sittings to address a number of these recommendations. And you know, we've been through those recommendations, the departments are looking into them, and what we have noticed from the coroner's report is that a lot of those recommendations in there are things that are already existing, things that are, you know, already taking place, but we know there's a lot more work to be done. And on this side of the House, the CLP government, you know, we're not going to sit back and just do the same thing that Labor had done after over 8 years when it comes to domestic violence. And I think I might even hand over to my colleague, the Minister for Prevention of Domestic Violence, to explain some of those recommendations, because there was a lot in your answer there. But what I do know is that we take it very seriously, and there's many recommendations in there that are already underway. It's all very important work, but I think I will hand over to my colleague to just go specifically into those.
Point of order, Madam Speaker.
What's your point of order, Member for Johnston?
The question's actually in the portfolio of the addressing the portfolio of the Attorney General, not about existing funding, but new programs that are specifically in that portfolio.
Okay, the Minister understanding orders can refer to another minister to answer the question.
It's a very important conversation to have, Member for Johnson, which is why I want to make sure I do it absolute justice. And you know, the Minister for Prevention of Domestic Violence has been doing a lot of work in this space already with her department, and I think that's why she's best to answer this particular part of those recommendations.
Minister for Domestic Violence.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Member for Johnson, for that question. Just on what my colleague, the Attorney General, has said, the actual response to the coroner's recommendation was coordinated by the Department of Children and Families, and so the consultation occurred across the whole of government. Everybody was involved, everybody got to have a say about where things should land. And as my colleague has already said, what was interesting to us was that of those recommendations, 24 of the recommendations made referred to programs that were already in existence, some of them for quite some time. So the reassuring thing in there is that those programs that the coroner felt should be in place to a large extent are in place. Some of them will need some work. Some of them are not achieving the results that we would hope that they would achieve, and we hope that the coroner recognises that. There were a number of programs that were not in place that we've looked at, and just to give you I'm sorry, I didn't jot down all your numbers, but I'll give it a go. Do you want to tell me which ones again?
Recommendation 18, 19 and 20.
18, okay. So in terms of recommendation 18, we've supported that in principle, and we're working to look to see how we can achieve that. In terms of 19, those programs already exist, so we're looking at enhancing. And in terms of 20, yes, it's a new and it's supported in principle, but they will require a considerable amount of work, so that work is being done.
Member for Casuarina, what is your question?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is also to the Attorney General. Can Attorney General update the House on how the Finocchiaro CLP government is delivering real reform, leadership and long-term stability to the Territory's legal assistance services, particularly Legal Aid NT? Why is it so important to provide funding, certainty and strong direction in this space? And how does this compare to the former Labor government's neglect? What practical outcomes can Territorians expect from these changes, especially vulnerable people who rely on the Legal Aid NT for access to justice, and victims who deserve timely resolution and a justice system that actually delivers?
Attorney General. Silence. Member for Guadja. Silence, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the member for Casuarina. This is a really important question because what we know, Territorians have been suffering, a lot of crime crisis going on for a long time under Labor and their leadership. And what that has done to Territorians and to victims has put them through a lot of extra trauma, because as they're having to enter the justice system as a victim who is having to face an offender's charges, it just takes an absolute eternity. And legal aid is part of that whole justice system. So when we have remand times and in the Supreme Court is over 400 days for a matter to be dealt with from start to finish. That puts a lot of pressure on victims. I mean, you can imagine a hearing when their families are there to support them, Madam Speaker. They might be from interstate, so they've taken time off work, they've booked flights, and they're all here to support their family member who's been a victim of crime. And all of a sudden they go to the court only to hear it's been adjourned, which is not okay. And that could be for a range of reasons in our system, which is exactly why I'm standing here today, to fix all of these problems we've had. And one of those areas is the trouble that we've seen with legal aid. You know, they have been calling for reform and for change for so long. They've been calling for certainty around their funding. I mean, they've had to come to government every single year begging for more money so they can meet up with the demand. And of course, we're all for justice for victims. And so when I met with legal aid and they said we really need this funding, one of the first things we did was actually give them an extra $3.5 million so they could actually deal with the demand of the new laws that we brought in October. And then since then, we had a budget that was handed down just this week by the Treasurer, and in that budget, it did give legal aid that certainty of an extra $5.5 million a year ongoing. So now that organisation, with new leadership, as we've already spoken about in this House today with Ms Vermaad, can actually take the organisation into a place, change it up so that they can offer those services to our vulnerable Territorians, to our victims, so they can have justice faster. And there is a sustainability committee and action plan which has been supported by this government, supported by me, and of course the new director that's going to be in that position in the next month will be able to make those changes to ensure that we can clear backlogs and we can improve criminal and family law service delivery, because we do need to restore that confidence for Territorians in our whole justice system, not just with our policing, not just with our corrections, but our courts and our legal services as well. So I'm really happy that the funding was approved, of $5.5 million of extra ongoing funding. It's really important work to ensure that we can have our vulnerable Territorians represented in the legal system, Madam Speaker.
Member for Nightcliff.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my question is for the Minister for Prevention of Domestic Violence. Minister, Dawn House is one of our incredibly valued and essential frontline services for women and children fleeing men's violence. It has been running since the 70s, has saved unknowable amounts of lives, and is a leader in expertise in our domestic violence sector. Despite their best efforts, they have to turn away between 100 to 200 women and their children per month due to lack of funding and resources. Minister, I looked it up. They are 14 kilometres from your electorate office. Have you visited Dawn House and spoken to their staff?
Minister for the Prevention of Domestic Violence.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Member for Nightcliff, for that question. I have met physically with them, and I have now organised twice to attend Dawn House. Unfortunately, the first time there was an issue around being able to get there, Madam Speaker, and the person had another commitment that wasn't quite right. And then the second time that was scheduled clashed with the response, from my memory, to the incident that happened in Nightcliff. So some very last-minute rearranging had to be done. It is in my calendar. I am absolutely very keen to visit Dawn House, as I have already visited Ruby Gaia. I've also met with WASCA and visited their services. I met with and I've forgotten Doors in the suburbs as well. I have actually met, Madam Speaker, with around 40 NGO providers in this space. Some of them are doing prevention work, some of them are doing crisis work, some of them are doing policy work. I had a fantastic meeting with the YWCA's Amplifying Voices group, who are a group of women from a diverse range of backgrounds, both in their sexuality, in their professional, in their home life, in their ethnic backgrounds, who were all women with lived experience of domestic, family and sexual violence, and had some fantastic ideas that I have actually already taken to my Cabinet colleagues to progress. So it's very important to me to visit these services on the ground, to see what they look like, to see what they're dealing with. Dawn House does a great job. A very dear friend of mine, Sally Gearan, actually was the founder of that particular service. She does great work. I've met with her on a number of occasions to discuss how we can actually progress in this area. what the issues are that we should be focusing on. And I'm very proud to say that the feedback and the information that's coming from these groups, giving me very unfettered, unsterilised, very frank and fearless advice, is really reassuring because it tells me exactly what's happening on the ground. Thanks, Madam Speaker.
Member for Wanguri.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Sport. Minister, as we move into the dry season, the top end is once again becoming a hub for local and major events. I was very pleased to hear you announce in the budget, your speech yesterday, that the NT government would again be supporting the AFLW Dreamtime match between Essendon and Richmond. Yes, go the Tigers. I was actually on the sidelines as a child. Yes. It demonstrates that not only in the budget delivering on reducing crime and rebuilding our economy, but also restoring our lifestyle. Can the Minister please update the House and Territorians on what's happening in our sporting communities?
Minister for People, Sport and Culture.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank Member for Wanguri for the question. The Finocchiaro CLP government is proud to be delivering on its election promise to restore our lifestyle. Yesterday, I went out to TIO Stadium where we officially announced the 2025 AFLW Dreamtime match between Richmond and Essendon to be played at TIO Stadium in Darwin in August 2025. It was great to meet Essendon AFLW player Bess Carney and Richmond AFLW player Gabby Seymour, who were at the announcement and both played in the last year's drawn match, along with the head of the AFL, Andrew Dillon, and AFL-ND chair, Sean Bowden. Last night, Darwin also hosted the Han Australia Soccer Cup between Wellington Phoenix and Brisbane Roar, and I was there to view the exciting match, and was great to see the Territorians were out there and enjoying the match in the evening. Tonight, Territorians will pack out TIO Stadium as the Territory Gold Coast Suns face Hawthorn, and this follows last weekend's clash between Suns and West End Bulldogs and build momentum to August AFLW Dreamtime match. We are already hosted an NRL match in April between Eels and Raiders, and in August we welcome international cricket back to the top end with international hockey and motocross GP to follow. Some of these events are supported by a transformation of TIO Stadium, which will seamlessly host NRL, AFL and cricket, showing we can match any venue in the country. But the dry season is not just about elite sport in the territory. It's also about our communities coming together through local competitions, grassroots engagement, and showcasing what sport means to everyday Territorians and how important it is to our territory lifestyle. Sporting facilities are a buzz of activity, not just on the weekends, but also weeknights, and we will invest in our sporting facilities to ensure all sports have the facilities they require. The dry season sees local sports such as NRL, cricket, hockey, netball, basketball, and soccer come back to life after the wet season and bring the community together. I am eager to continue to get out and visit our sporting Territorians doing what they love. And to close, Madam Speaker, it's important to note that the sport in the territory is more than just competition. It's about connection. It's about the community barbecues after a game, the lifelong friendships, and a pathway for kids dreaming big. This dry season, we are proud to back our local players, clubs, and volunteers every step of the way. I thank Member for Wanguri for the question, and also looking forward to go out with Member for Wanguri and many other members to support the sporting communities across the Northern Territory. Thank you.
Member for Arafura.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Lands, Planning and Environment. Minister, the former Labor government committed to fund the Aboriginal Ranger Grants Program. The CLP matched that commitment. Yet in this budget, you've scrapped this $12 million program, despite independent review finding that it delivered critical outcomes in land and sea management across the territory. You have thrown Aboriginal Ranger groups under the bus, stripping them of the resources they need to fight feral animals, control weeds, and mitigate fire risk. How do you justify breaking this election commitment and betraying our ranger groups? How many jobs and economic opportunities will be lost because you decided to axe this funding and break your promise?
Minister for Lands, Planning and Environment.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for the question. Let's be very clear, Madam Speaker. You can't act something that's never there. This time-limited funding ended in June, Madam Speaker. That is the truth of the matter here, Madam Speaker. And just like Mother Hubbard, when she went to the cupboard, when the Treasurer went to the cupboard to look at where this funding was, it was not there, Madam Speaker. Labor were doing their dirty tricks, Madam Speaker, to ensure they could keep under the $15 billion debt cap, Madam Speaker. That is what they were doing. They did not allocate any funding towards Ranger groups. That is the truth of the matter. It was time-limited funding that was ending in June of this year. They did not budget for a number of things, Madam Speaker. Some things we've continued to discover since coming to government, and the Treasurer has spoken at great length about that time-limited funding. The member for the opposition said on ABC Radio that Labor had a plan for reducing debt over the next few years. Yet we don't exactly know what that was going to be, Madam Speaker. Just spend more and more. That was their answer, Madam Speaker. Well, that's not what the CLP Finocchiaro government are doing. We are ensuring that we are making responsible decisions to get the budget under control. And the Treasurer has outlined how we are spending $300 million less whilst continuing to invest in police, in the correction services, in our courts, Madam Speaker, and in our DV services.
Silence. Minister, take your seat. Leader of the Opposition, what is your point of order?
Standing Order 110, relevance, Madam Speaker. The question was clearly around the election commitment the CLP made and why did they break that in this budget?
I think the Minister's answering it. Please continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I will say again very loudly and clearly for anyone listening here today, the Ranger Grants program was time-limited funding that ended in June of this year, and there was no funding put in the budget by the Labor government to continue that into the future. Our budget, Madam Speaker, that we have handed down puts victims of crime first. We have put forward a responsible budget in regards to law and order. This government remains supportive, Madam Speaker, of Aboriginal Ranger groups in the Northern Territory. They receive money.
Take your seat. What's the your point of order, member for Guadja?
It is 110 relevance, Madam Speaker. The member for Namatjira said that CLP remains committed to Aboriginal grant range programs. If elected, we will fully fund the program with $12 million over 4 years. Why have you broken that promise?
Okay. Please continue, Minister. There'll be no more points of order. I think the Minister gets the question. No need to repeat it. Okay, Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This government remains supportive of the Aboriginal Ranger groups in the Northern Territory. The Aboriginal Ranger groups, to be very clear, receive funding from the Commonwealth Government and will continue to do so. There are a range of anti-government initiatives and programs.
Can you pause? Opposition Leader, last warning. Please continue, Minister.
Thank you very much. There are a range of anti-government initiatives and programs for which our Aboriginal Ranger groups can apply for targeted funding, project funding, something we will support them to do.
Please sit down. There's no more points of order. 16 seconds to go, Minister. Please continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We will continue to work with Aboriginal Ranger groups across the Territory to ensure we can support them in their important work moving forward, Madam Speaker.
Member for Fanny Bay, what's your question?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Health. Minister, I bring to your attention the importance of breast screening for Territorian women. Madam Speaker, breast cancer is the most common cancer diagnosed in females in the NT, and incident rates are rising, especially amongst Aboriginal women. Regular screening is the most effective way to detect breast cancer and improve survival rates for women aged between 40 and 74 years of age. Detection of breast cancer when it is small and confined to the breast provides the best chance of effective treatment, and we know that screening participation in the NT is the lowest in Australia. Minister, what is the Finocchiaro CLP government doing to encourage Territorian women to have breast screening as well as a full health check to have certainty around any health concerns?
Minister for Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for Fanny Bay for this important question. Member for Fanny Bay, the Breast Screen NT mobile screening bus named Millie is taking free breast screening to remote communities across the Territory as we speak. Along with my colleague, the member for Katherine, Jo Hersey, I met with the staff from Millie when it was stationed outside Parliament House at the start of its annual trip from May to October. Breast Screen NT provides free mammograms for the early detection of breast cancer in women aged between the ages of 40 to 74. This is such an important service, especially for those women who live a great distance away from clinics and health services. As you highlighted, Member for Fanny Bay, regular screening is the most effective way to detect cancer and improve survival rates for women over 40. Detection of breast cancer when it is small and confined to the breast provides the best chance of effective treatment. The benefits of early detection also include a greater range of treatment options and improved quality of life after treatment. The survival rate for early breast cancer is over 95%, with the majority of breast cancers diagnosed by Breast Screen NT falling into this category. In 2024, Breast Screen NT detected breast cancer in 58 women here in the Northern Territory. Madam Speaker, after Millie left Darwin in early May, it started its journey and it's now on its way to regional and remote communities right across the Northern Territory. This includes Warramiunga on Bathurst Island, Daly River, Katherine, Borroloola, Tennant Creek, Tea Tree, Hermansburg, Yuendamu, Harts Range, Yalara and Ali Kurung. Breast Screen NT works with remote primary healthcare centres to ensure all eligible women have their breast screened when Millie is in their community. There are permanent screening facilities in Darwin and Palmerston and 2 screening blocks each year in Alice Springs from April to May and August to September. As part of our year of action, Madam Speaker, certainty and security, I encourage women to take action and have breast screening as well as a full health check to have certainty for any health concerns. And Madam Speaker, I do want to mention in regard to breast cancer, myself and the member for Karama were out at NT Breast Cancer Voice on Saturday morning, and I just want to acknowledge the chairperson of NTBCV, Judy Smith, and the committee for holding the Inform, Reflect and Connect forum on Saturday to really highlight the services available to not only diagnose but to prevent breast cancer here in the Northern Territory. So the work, the forum, sharing that voice right across the board, it was a pleasure to have the Assistant Minister for Health there on Saturday morning with myself, and thank you once again to NT Breast Cancer Voice. And Madam Speaker, in closing, I move that any further questions be placed on the written notice paper.